Asura's Wrath is an interactive anime presented as an action game released February 12th of 2012, developed by CyberConnect, the studio behind the Dot Hack games. Most of its gameplay consists of mediocre arena fight segments that work towards a burst, resulting in a cutscene and a series of quick-time event presses that you get ranked on afterwards. It's not deep and it's not trying to be, in terms of gameplay at least. Story, there's more to that. You see, this video is one of a linked pair, done in collaboration with Sammy over at Trans Witch Reviews. While her video focuses on the mechanical expression of the game and the way the QuickTime events bring you closer to Asura, she doesn't have as strong a connection to the narrative of the game itself. That's where I come in, because I do have a stronger connection to the narrative, to the way it is structured, and to the fact that Asura's Wrath is full-on Buddhist myth and philosophy the game. And I admit I learned most of this philosophy and thought because I wanted to understand Asura's Wrath more. So let me be your bodhisattva this evening as I spoil the story of a game that, honestly, cannot be spoiled, as seeing it is nowhere near as important to it as playing it is. Get ready to kill 6 billion demons and break the wheel. This is Asura's Wrath. Let's start with a glossary of terms. Buddhism is a school of thought turned major world religion founded by Siddhartha Gautama somewhere in the 6th to 5th century BCE. Yeah, that was a Wikipedia joke. The point of it is that humans are stuck in a cycle of suffering and rebirth, and that one can escape the cycle through working towards enlightenment by being a good person. And enlightenment, nirvana here, does not mean heaven and a peaceful afterlife, like how Christians, both religious and cultural, which I am part of sadly, would have you think with their interpretation of Buddhist thought. It's literally ego death. You stop existing because you no longer give a shit in a positive nihilism way. Nothing matters, dude! You're being a good person for the sake of being a good person and do not care what happens next. As the religion grew, it gained some theistic elements, most notably making Buddha, the enlightened one, Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, the man, into somewhat of a godlike figure. That's why he's roomies with Jesus and Saint Young Men, and that's why, if you've read Journey to the West, or have been watching the long-running, overly sarcastic production's retelling of it, you know how big of a deal he ended up being. I mean, Sun Wukong is there to fly out of the Buddha's hand, and so he flies to the edge of the universe and pisses on a giant pillar, and it turns out he pissed on Buddha's middle finger because the universe is in the palm of his hand. Kind of a big deal. And so with that came the idea of bodhisattvas and of Naraka. A bodhisattva is someone who has achieved enlightenment, who can leave the cycle of suffering and rebirth and achieve nirvana, but doesn't, so they can guide others on that path. You can pray to them like you do to a Catholic saint with a bunch of domains they watch over. All I got was John the Baptist, who doesn't have any domains, but I'm trans, I can refund him. Meanwhile, Naraka is a collection of hells one is reborn into due to their actions on Earth. And you spend a specific amount of time in until you get to move on to the next one and then the next one, all the way up back to Earth because Naraka is underneath our feet. I think that's enough of a glossary to understand some of the things in this game. So let's set the stakes. In an unknown time, on a world very much like our own, there exists three groups. Humans, who live on the surface and struggle every day against the onslaught of the second group, the Goma, servants of Vritra, expressions of the wrath of the planet. And Vritra is admittedly one of my favorite dragons in Final Fantasy XIV, but it's currently irrelevant. Our final group are the demigods, living in a floating station above the clouds, who our lead cast are part of. Powered by mantra energy generated by the prayer of humans, they fight day and night against the Goma, hoping to one day defeat Vritra and rid the world of their threat. The demigods have an emperor. This emperor has an army. The army is led by the 8 guardian generals: Deus, Olga, Sergei, Wyzen, August, Kalro, Yasha, and Asura. Each of them is aligned with one of the 8 kinds of mantra, here meaning wise. Deus is pride, Olga is lust, Sergei is vanity, Wyzen is violence, August is greed, Kalro is sloth, Yasha is melancholy, and Asura is wrath. Asura, as our lead character, has a wife, Durga, and together they had a daughter, Mithra. Mithra got chosen as the priestess because of her strong mantra channeling powers. Durga is also Yasha's sister, making Yasha and Asura brothers-in-law. The game and our story opens with, well, I don't think words can truly describe it. Just watch. such a fucking banger. The contrast of this prayer song with the visuals of a space battle is simply gorgeous. That shortly thereafter, Asura gets betrayed. He's framed for the murder of the Emperor. His wife is killed, his daughter kidnapped, and in trying to save his daughter, he himself is killed. Leading us into part 1, Suffering, and the start of The Wheel. The title of the part really shows what happens in these segments, these episodes as the game calls them. And it's not that it just calls them, they are episodes of an anime. Each one has a mid-episode ad break, Asura's Wrath. Asura's Wrath. You've seen Fullmetal Alchemist, I hope. If not by now, you better fucking. And that makes it feel even more like an interactive anime. I would not mind another game trying to do what Asura's Wrath did with its presentation, cutting out the arena fights and just making it a QTE interactive anime. Right? Suffering. That's all Asura does in this segment. He wakes up hanging on a pillar in one of the levels of Naraka, a small golden spider speaking to him, and Asura, angry and wrathful, rushes his way up the pillar. Now, this part alludes to the Spider's Threads short story that was inspired by a Buddhist fable. Basically, because an unrepentant sinner spared a spider once, Buddha let down a thread from paradise that the sinner could climb on. But others start climbing it, and he yells that the thread is just for him, and it snaps in that moment because he was obsessed with his own salvation and not that of others. Asura has only one goal: kick Deus's ass for kidnapping Mithra. In other words, the salvation of others. And so the spider's thread is replaced with a massive stone pillar he rushes up. But the world he rushes up to is much different from the one he left. It's been centuries. The other generals have rebranded as the Seven Deities and have cast Asura as a demon in their tale. Asura are demons in Hindu myth that are opposed to the Deva, so that tracks. Asura arrives in a small town that gets attacked by Goma. He saves it only for the demigod army to appear and to start murdering the humans, because grabbing a human soul is faster for mantra collection than having them pray, and the demigods have plans. This pisses off Asura, and he starts growing hands only for Wyzen to show up, fight Asura, grow planet-sized, and get his ass beaten. But Asura is busted up to hell and back, and so ends up killed again by Yasha, who asks him not to come back. Thus ends part 1, Suffering. Really, there isn't much that happens narratively here in the first 6 episodes, and so it feels very trope-laden. You've got the angry dad, you got the kidnapped daughter, you got the group of bad guys you have to beat, like Trigger and Gainax before them's for general trope you see in Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill, but it's the fact this is just part of one of the story, the first step of the cycle, of the wheel, that matters. Because after Suffering comes Rebirth. Part 2 Rebirth in Asura's Wrath's case, and there are things reborn. Asura once again rushes out of Naraka and wakes as the centerpiece of a shrine to him, at which a young girl is praying, a girl that looks just like his daughter and is in danger. Goma kidnaps her, and he does his best to save her. But like before, one of the deities shows up, in this case Kalro, to cleanse the village, and Asura refuses it. he fights his way all the way up to Wyzen's flagship and crushes him alive in an escape pod. And when he falls to Earth, we get the most awkward moment in gaming history. More awkward than getting a Chivo for seeing Lollipop Chainsaw's underwear. You see, August grabbed Asura and took him to a hot spring, where they're served by pretty ladies. The entire episode is about getting Asura drunk enough for the burst mirror to fill up, which has him nearly sexually assault one of the ladies, stopped only by August's fist. And then they go to the moon. And Antonin Dvořák's Symphony No. 9 from the New World, z Nového Světa, plays as the backdrop to their climactic fight. There's not many things I can be proud of as a Czech girl that people know of, but the Dvořák's composition that he performed in New York is one of them. The highlight of this section is the sword that August pulls out. Hypergangsters, pay attention now, because this thing just keeps growing and growing and growing until it pierces the fucking earth. Asura still beats him and grabs the leftovers of that sword in his teeth. I don't have teeth. I can't mind that. I have beak, not teeth. Because his arms are gone again. What the fuck is this? Metal Gear Solid and Raiden? Well, he still goes to fight a huge wave of Goma with that sword in his mouth, and it's covered in a very sloppily to the animated half episode that you can ignore. It's fine. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that Olga shows up to finish Kaoru's job, and she manages to kill Mithra XP, and Asura fucking loses it. He turns into a golden beast. That's the best way to describe him. Just a metal shell of rage with 4 vents on his back, from which emerge these massive flame energy arms that he blasts the fleet of spaceships from the ground while howling, just howling his poor little heart out. And Olga has him blasted with the Brahmastra, a giant space station the generals, now gods, deities, have been constructing out of mantra for centuries, and all it does is char the surface of Asura and finish Part 2 Rebirth, leading right into Part 3 Karma, work, and the weight of what you've done. And work is what happens here, because we play as Yasha for the first 3 episodes of this part. The rival who put on a blindfold to ignore the atrocities committed by the other deities, like killing his sister and kidnapping his niece. But seeing Asura fight the way he does, Yasha is filled with doubt about the work being done. What if there is a different way, another way, and Deus as the head just will not have it? So he sends him and Sergei on a mission to cleanse the village of Goma, and Yasha does his best to stop the horde before they reach the village, but it doesn't matter, because Sergei nukes it anyway for the mantra, and then gets killed by Asura, who shows up, and who you fight as Yasha to calm his tits at least enough to be coherent. And you do the work to defeat Deus and show him there's a different way by freeing Mithra and killing Vrutra, and this is episode 18. The game should be over, right? But you get an extra scene of Olga ready to kill Mithra as revenge for Asura and Yasha killing Deus, but she gets destroyed by the tiny golden spider. And part 3 ends. And part 4 is DLC. Everybody's bitched about it since that came out. You have to pay extra for Nirvana. What is this? Fucking indulgences during the Middle Ages? You have to pay to get into heaven to be forgiven your sins? It's like paying for the unaired OVA that the studio finished but the network didn't air, or like going to the cinema to watch a follow-up movie that ties the loose ends that the series did not get to finish. If you go back through my channel, you can find some old VODs of me playing the entirety of Asura's Wrath, and in those you can see that I titled the VOD covering Nirvana in its entirety, because the first one covers the previous three parts, as Asura's Wrath Rebellion, alluding to Puella Magi Madoka Magica Rebellion, which is the third movie in the Madoka Magica movie series, with the first two being clip shows of the anime's first and second half respectively, cutting it down to size. So to see the entirety of Madoka, you had to have watched the anime and then gone to see the movies, where the first two movies were just a recap of the anime. What sucks more is that Nirvana ties the story together, finishes Asura's journey through the wheel, and what's more, I guess I'll show you when we get there. Because the gold spider is Chakravartim, the spinner of mantra, the god of the wheel of karma. The name in Sanskrit literally means one who spins the wheel. He declares that Asura did it. He passed the trial. He can become that which Chakravartim desired for this world, a god to lead it. Asura rejects it, saying he hates being prayed to and tries fighting God. He barely survives this first round, landing back on Earth, and Chakravartin acts like the abusive parent he is and spawns more Goma. Yasha gives up his core to provide mantra for Asura, while equipping him with the mantra reactor that powered up the Brahmastra, and declares him and Asura will fight to see who is the strongest, like they used to in their youth once Asura wakes up. It is a draw, because Yasha dies with a smile on his face before Asura lands the final blow. And again, I need to point to the companion of this video done by Sammy, because she spends the time talking about the way the QTE here feels, where it slowly closes in and you want that perfect, so you patiently wait for that perfect moment and then it disappears and you are denied. Asura goes to face God in a flying through space segment the size of Wizen. Once he breaks in to God's domain, which looks like this shall be our world, suspiciously enough, Chakravartin declares once again that Asura is worthy of being the Bodhisattva for this world, but Asura refuses him. He will not pray and will not be prayed to because he believes everyone has the strength to pursue their goals and does not need idols to pray to. In a place like this, followed up by a white void, he destroys God. But Chakravartin is the source of mantra, of his literal life energy. He will die without it. But he's okay with that, because the source of his daughter's suffering is gone. She's free. She doesn't have to cry anymore. And so he has nobody left to punch. He's punched his way up the totem pole to oblivion, towards becoming nothing but a satisfied smile. He has brought salvation to the world. He has done the work higher than anyone ever could. And so he achieves Nirvana. Asura not only leaves the wheel, the cycle, by achieving Nirvana, but he breaks it, smashes it in the face with your help by pressing the circle button that by this point might be broken. This is why I think the game is deeper than might appear at first glance. It doesn't go too deep with its Buddhist thought or message, but it does use it in a very creative way and it really focuses on it. And isn't it funny that your most used input, the PlayStation version of this game, is the circle button once again? That you probably broke by this point? I think it is. And you know what? As I said at the start, even saying this does not, in my opinion, spoil the act of playing Asura's Wrath, which you should play. It's only 10 hours. Supposedly, it's backwards compatible on Xbox, but that makes it awkward because you still need to get the DLC and pay a bunch of money for that. So I say, you follow the example of our ancestors, the fan subbers, the bootleggers that brought VHSs with own subs inserted, and emulate this shit. It runs great on our PCS3. It just needs a couple seconds to load everything up. At least back when I played it, it did. That might have been solved by now. And it's how I played it, as you can see in the VODs for it. So no matter which order you found our videos in, you better go watch Sammy's video that talks about the mechanics and the way they make you connect with Asura more. Because this video does not work without that video. That video is helped a little bit by this video. I'm not asking. You will watch it. Or else. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. As mentioned, again, it's a collaboration with Transwitch Sammy, whose video will be linked down in the description if it isn't yet, once she gives me the link. We're hoping to post this at the same time. So, of course, it'll be harder. So, by the time you see this, it might have the link on it already. You know what this part is? It's the Patreon thanks section. $20, Aurora. $10, Kylie the Healer Witch. $5. If you'd like to join them, the link is down in the description below. There's further ways to support me, like Coffee, where you can do one-time donations, or itch.io, where you can buy the things I've written. There's also other places to follow me, like Twitter, Tumblr, Twitch, where I haven't streamed in a while, but I might. I might surprise you with a morning stream, who knows? And besides that, that's it. I've been Katie, and I'll see you next time. Bye.